The card reader
Declined?
beeped
That can't
once,
be right.
sharp
I'm
and
sorry,
loud,
sir, it says
cutting through the
declined.
grocery store
Fine, I'll
like a
use a different one.
slap.
Of course.
Declined.
I'm sorry, sir.
Nathaniel Cross froze mid-movement, his hand still hovering above the counter, as if the word hadn't fully landed yet. The cashier tilted the screen toward him, lips curling into a grin that was a little too amused. "Sir," she said loudly, tapping the screen, "it didn't go through." A few heads turned. A cart stopped rolling behind him. Someone coughed. Nathaniel swallowed and reached into his jacket again. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "Try it once more." The cashier shrugged and swiped the matte black card again, slower this time, almost theatrical. "Beep." "Declined," the machine repeated. A laugh burst out, too loud, too sudden. The cashier didn't even try to hide it. "Well," she said, folding her arms, "I guess the black card doesn't always mean what people think it means." A man behind Nathaniel snorted. Someone else whispered something that made another shopper smile. Nathaniel felt the heat rush up his neck. He straightened his shoulders, forcing his voice to stay steady. "I have another card." He slid a second one forward. This one wasn't black. It was silver. Beep. Declined. The silence that followed was worse than the laughter. It pressed in on him from all sides. Nathaniel stared at the counter, at the small pile of groceries he'd picked up without thinking. Bread, eggs, milk, a bag of apples. Ordinary things, things he hadn't paid attention to in years. "You holding up the line, man," someone muttered. "Yeah," the cashier added, rolling her eyes. "If you can't pay, step aside." Nathaniel exhaled slowly. Just give me a moment." Beside him, a small hand tugged gently at his sleeve. He looked down. The girl had been quiet the whole time, maybe 7 years old. Dark curls pulled back with a worn pink clip. Big eyes that had been watching everything. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. He nodded too quickly. "I'm fine." But his voice cracked, just slightly. The cashier sighed. "Sir, do you want me to cancel the transaction or not?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket again, fingers brushing uselessly against lint and keys. He felt ridiculous, exposed, stripped of something he hadn't even realized he relied on so heavily. He had walked into boardrooms where men stood when he entered. He had signed deals worth more than this store would make in a year without breaking a sweat. And now he couldn't buy groceries. "Bank cancel it," he said. The cashier reached for the screen. "Wait!" The word didn't come from him. The girl stepped forward. Before Nathaniel could react, she dug into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small fistful of crumpled bills and loose coins. She climbed onto the tip of her toes and placed them carefully on the counter. "I can help," she said. The store went silent. Nathaniel stared at the money, then at her face. "No," he said immediately. "You don't have to do that." She shrugged, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You need it." The cashier blinked. "Sweetheart, that's not—" "It's okay," the girl said, her voice firm but gentle. "My mum gave me this for later, but he looks like he needs it now." Nathaniel felt something twist painfully in his chest. He crouched down so they were eye level. What's your name?" "Lila," she said. "Lila," he repeated carefully. "That's very kind of you, but I can't take your money." She frowned. "Why?" Because it's yours." She thought about that for a moment, then pushed the bills closer to him. "But you're here and I'm here, and you look sad." The word hit harder than any insult in the room. Sad. Nathaniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. He felt the sting behind his eyes and hated himself for it. "I'll pay you back," he said finally, his voice low. "I promise," she smiled. "Okay." The cashier cleared her throat, suddenly uncomfortable. It's enough," she muttered, counting the money quickly. "Transaction approved." The machine beeped again. This time it sounded different. Approved. No one laughed. No one spoke. Nathaniel stood slowly, and gathered the bags with hands that weren't quite steady, and turned to Lila. Thank you, he said. You helped me when you didn't have to. She nodded like it was nothing. Outside, the late afternoon air felt cooler. Nathaniel stopped near the door. Do you live nearby? She pointed down the street. That way. I'll walk with you, he said without thinking. They walked side by side, the city noise filling the space between them. After a few steps, she looked up at him. Why didn't your card work? She asked. He hesitated. Sometimes things stop working when you expect them to. She considered that. That happens to my mum too. He glanced at her. What does your mum do? She cleans offices at night, Lila said. She's tired a lot. They turned onto a quieter street. The buildings were older here, paint peeling, eye windows cracked. This is us, she said, stopping in front of a small apartment building. Inside, the place was modest, clean but worn. A woman stood near the sink, scrubbing dishes with quick, practiced movements. She turned sharply when she saw them. Lila? Her eyes flicked to Nathaniel. Who's this? I'm Nathaniel, he said quickly. I met your daughter at the store. Rosa wiped her hands on a towel, cautious but polite. Is everything okay? Yes, Nathaniel said. More than okay. Lila ran to her mother, wrapping her arms around her waist. I helped him, she announced proudly. Rosa looked confused. Helped him how? Nathaniel took a breath. My card was declined. She paid for my groceries. Rosa's face drained of color. Lila, it's okay, Nathaniel said gently. No, she did something extraordinary. Rosa knelt in front of her daughter. That was your money. I know, Lila said, but he needed it. Nathaniel felt the weight of the words settle deep in his chest. He reached into his wallet and pulled out cash, placing it carefully on the table. Please, let me return it. Rosa hesitated, then nodded slowly. Thank you. Nathaniel left a few moments later, stepping back into the evening with a heaviness he couldn't shake. That night, he didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lila's small hand pushing the money forward. Heard her say, You looked like you needed help. By morning, something in him had shifted. Meetings were cancelled, calls ignored. Instead, he found himself back in another grocery store days later. It watching quietly from a corner as an elderly man struggled at the register. Nathaniel stepped forward before the cashier could speak. I've got it, he said. The man looked at him, surprised. You don't have to. I know, Nathaniel replied. That's why I want to. It didn't stop there. Bills paid anonymously, groceries covered without explanation, repairs arranged for apartments that had been falling apart for years. He didn't put his name on any of it. When someone asked why he was doing it, he said only, because I learned something. Months passed. The Open Hands initiative was born quietly, without press releases or galas. It focused on dignity, on presence, on showing up where people felt invisible. Nathaniel visited stores himself, walked neighborhoods he'd never seen from the inside, listened more than he spoke. And every time he hesitated, every time his old instincts whispered about image or control, he remembered a girl with crumpled bills and a simple truth. You looked like you needed help. Years later, when people spoke about Nathaniel Cross, they didn't talk about skyscrapers or contracts. They talked about a grocery store, about a card that didn't work, about a child who did. And now, as this story ends, the question turns quietly toward you. If you were in that store, would you have laughed, would you have looked away, or would you have stepped forward? If this story moved you, take a second to like the video. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done? Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness carries the greatest weight.